You're crouched on your heels at the edge of a clearing. It's 40,000 BC. The hunt is over. Your legs are folded underneath you, knees bent all the way, your backside hovering inches above the dirt, your feet flat on the ground. And you are completely, perfectly comfortable. You could stay like this for an hour, 2 hours. You're chatting. You're sharpening a blade. You're watching the horizon for movement. And it would never, not once, occur to you to look for a chair. Because there are no chairs. There's no bench. There's no couch with the perfect lumbar support that cost 3 months of your ancestors' hypothetical salary. There's just you, the ground, and a body that knows exactly what to do with it. Now picture yourself trying that today. Go on, try it right now. Drop into a full squat, heels flat, and just hang out there. For most of you watching this, something is going to go wrong in about 90 seconds. Your heels lift off the floor. Your lower back screams. Your knees file a formal complaint. You topple backward like a deeply confused toddler. And you stand back up thinking, well, that's just not a natural position for a human body. Except here's the thing nobody tells you. It is. It absolutely is. In fact, it might be one of the most natural positions a human body can hold. And the fact that you can't do it anymore isn't a quirk of your particular anatomy. It's a symptom of something that happened to almost the entire modern world in the span of a few generations. This is the story of why ancient humans rested by squatting, why your great-great ancestors spent enormous chunks of their lives folded up like this, and why losing that one simple posture might be quietly wrecking your body in ways you've never connected to the chair you're probably sitting in right now. Let's start with a basic, uncomfortable fact about rest. Because you'd assume, wouldn't you, that ancient hunter-gatherers barely rested at all. The cliché is that they were lean, ripped, constantly running, perpetually on the move. Survival mode, 24/7. No time to sit down. That cliché is wrong. In 2020, a team led by anthropologist David Raichlen, then at the University of Arizona, published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The title alone tells you most of the story. It was about sitting, squatting, and the evolutionary biology of human inactivity. Raichlen and his colleagues had spent years studying the Hadza. The Hadza are a group of hunter-gatherers in northern Tanzania, around the shores of Lake Eyasi, and they live a life that is, structurally, about as close to our ancestral past as you can get on Earth today. They forage, they hunt with bows, they dig tubers, they don't farm, they don't keep livestock, and they very much do not have office chairs. So the researchers strapped devices on them to measure activity. And they were specifically looking for rest. How much do these people actually sit still? The answer was genuinely surprising. Around 10 hours a day. 10 hours. The Hadza, the supposedly relentlessly active hunter-gatherers, spent roughly the same amount of non-walking, non-moving resting time as the average sedentary office worker in a rich country. 10 hours a day of being still, which, on the surface, completely demolishes the idea that ancestral life was one long CrossFit class. But here's where it gets interesting. Because if they rest as much as we do, and we know that sitting all day is slowly killing us, then the Hadza should be falling apart too, right? Same metabolic diseases, same back problems, same whole catastrophe. They're not. Rates of the diseases we associate with sitting, the cardiovascular stuff, the metabolic stuff, are strikingly low among the Hadza. And Reichlen's team thought the answer might be hiding not in how much they rest, but in how they rest. Because the Hadza don't rest the way you rest. They don't sink into a recliner. They don't slump into a desk chair with their spine curved like a question mark. When a Hadza adult takes a break, they squat, they kneel, they sit on the ground with their legs out and their core engaged. And the researchers measured something fascinating when they did it. Even at rest, even doing absolutely nothing, the muscles in their legs stayed active. They called it active rest. When you drop into a deep squat, your calves, your quads, your glutes, the deep stabilizers around your hips, none of them get to fully clock out. They're holding you there, quietly, continuously. The electrical activity in those muscles, measured by electromyography, was significantly higher in a squat or a kneel than it was in a chair. Not exhausting, not a workout, just a low, steady hum of engagement that never switches off. And that hum might be the whole point, because here's what we've learned about why sitting in a chair is so bad for you. It's not just that you're not moving, it's that your big muscles go completely electrically silent. And when those muscles shut down, they stop pulling sugar and fat out of your blood. An enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which normally helps clear fat from your bloodstream, drops off a cliff when your leg muscles are inactive. Your metabolism downshifts into a kind of standby mode. Do that for 10 hours a day, every day, for 40 years, and you get the modern epidemic of metabolic disease. But a squat keeps the lights on. Same amount of rest, same number of hours sitting still, completely different signal being sent to your body. One says, shut everything down. The other says, stay ready. So when an ancient human folded into a squat to rest by the fire, they weren't just being practical. They were, without knowing it, resting in a way that kept their metabolism alive. 10 hours of squatting is a fundamentally different biological event than 10 hours of slumping. And our ancestors did it not because they understood lipoprotein lipase, obviously, but because it was simply the only way to rest when the ground is your only furniture. Which brings us to the obvious question. If this position is so good for us and so natural, why can't most of you reading this even do it? To answer that, we have to talk about your ankles and your hips and a couple of bones in your body that literally remember what your ancestors did for a living. Let's do the body first. A full, flat-footed, heels-down resting squat demands a specific set of things from you. It needs serious flexibility in your ankles, specifically something called dorsiflexion, which is your ability to bring your shin forward over your foot. It needs deep mobility in your hips. It needs your knees to fold completely and bear load while folded. And it needs the whole thing to balance. Now, a young child has all of this automatically. Watch any toddler. They don't sit to play on the floor, they squat perfectly, heels flat, backside down, for ages. And they don't even notice they're doing something you'd need a physiotherapist to coach you back into. They are anatomically tiny hunter-gatherers. The capacity is built in. It's the factory default for the human body. And then we slowly train it out of them. Here's the part that's genuinely a little sad. You weren't born stiff. You were made stiff. The moment a child in an industrialized society starts spending their days in chairs, at school desks, on sofas, in car seats, the body starts doing what bodies always do. It adapts to what you ask of it. Ask it to sit at 90 degrees in a chair for thousands of hours, and it quietly decides it doesn't need that extra ankle range anymore. Use it or lose it isn't a motivational poster. It's how connective tissue actually works. Your calves shorten, your hip flexors tighten, your ankles forget. And one day, around your 20s, you try to squat down the way you did effortlessly at age 3, and your heels pop right off the floor like they're spring-loaded. You didn't lose the squat because you grew up. You lost it because of what you sat in while you grew up. And we know this isn't just theory because of a beautiful natural experiment that's still running today. There's a posture sometimes jokingly called the Asian squat, or the Slav squat, or the third world squat. And the joke is doing a lot of work there, because the pattern behind it is real. Across huge regions of Asia, Africa, and rural communities all over the planet, the deep resting squat never went away. People wait for the bus in it, they eat in it, they cook, they smoke, they gossip, they wait, all in a full, flat-footed squat for as long as they like. Not because their bones are different, but because they never stopped doing it. The chair never fully colonized their daily rest, so the ankles never forgot. Same species, same anatomy, wildly different abilities. And the only variable that changed is the furniture. Now here's where it gets really good, because this is where the dead start talking. If habitual squatting reshapes the soft tissue, you might wonder whether it leaves any deeper mark, whether thousands of hours in a posture can change you all the way down to the skeleton. And the answer is yes. It can, and it does. And anthropologists have known about it for over a century. They're called squatting facets. When a person squats deeply and habitually, over years and years, the extreme angle of the ankle causes the bones to grind and press against each other in a very particular spot. The end of your shin bone, the tibia, presses against the talus, one of the bones of your ankle. Do that constantly from childhood, and the bone responds. It develops small, smooth, extra little surfaces, facets, right where the contact happens. They are, quite literally, the fingerprints of a lifetime of squatting, pressed permanently into bone. And when archaeologists dig up ancient human skeletons, they look for them. These squatting facets show up again and again in skeletal remains from across the ancient world. In ancient Egyptians, in medieval populations, in prehistoric burials from Europe to Asia to the Americas. The pattern is consistent and it's telling. Habitual squatting was, for most of human history, simply how people existed when they weren't standing or lying down. The bones don't lie. Our ancestors squatted so much, so constantly, that they grew new bone to accommodate it. Try to imagine a posture so central to your daily life that your skeleton physically reshaped itself around it. That was the resting squat. That was normal. For tens of thousands of years, that was just being a person. And the chair? The thing you assume is the timeless, natural way to sit, on that scale, the chair is practically brand new. Let's talk about that, because the history here is wilder than you'd think. The chair, as a normal, everyday object, as a thing that ordinary people own and use constantly, is shockingly recent. For most of human history, a chair was not furniture. It was a symbol. It was power. Think about the words that survive. We still say a person chairs a meeting. We talk about the chair of a department, a chairman. We talk about a throne, which is just a chair you're not allowed to sit in. In ancient Egypt, in ancient Greece, in countless cultures, an elevated seat was reserved for gods, kings, pharaohs, judges. The person on the chair was above you, literally and socially. Everyone else was on the floor, squatting, kneeling, sitting cross-legged. So for the vast majority of people across the vast majority of history, resting meant getting low. The chair only became the default for everyone relatively recently, riding in on the back of industrialization, mass manufacturing, factory work, office work, and the school desk. In a couple of centuries, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, we took a species that had rested on the ground for hundreds of thousands of years, and we sat almost all of it up onto a raised platform with a backrest. And we are still figuring out what that did to us. Because the squat wasn't just about resting. It was woven into everything. Think about every single human function that, for most of history, happened close to the ground. You squatted to tend the fire. You squatted to grind grain. You squatted to scrape a hide, to weave, to repair a tool, to play with a child, to dig, to forage, to butcher, and yes, you squatted to go to the bathroom. Let's go there briefly, because it matters more than you'd expect. For almost all of human history, the natural position for elimination was a deep squat. And it turns out there's a real anatomical reason this works well. When you squat, there's a muscle that wraps around part of your lower digestive tract, the puborectalis muscle, which normally keeps a kind of kink in the pipe to hold everything in while you're upright. Squatting relaxes that muscle and straightens the angle. The plumbing, basically, lines up. Sitting upright on a modern toilet keeps that kink partially in place, which is why people sometimes have to, let's say, work harder than nature intended. This isn't fringe nonsense. It's the entire reason those little footstools that prop your feet up to mimic a squatting angle became a wildly popular product. People paid actual money to reverse engineer a posture their ancestors had for free. That's the recurring theme of this whole story, by the way. We removed the squat from our lives, then started selling pieces of it back to ourselves, one at a time. The footstool to squat on the toilet, the deep squat as a trendy mobility exercise, the squat as a thing physiotherapists now have to painstakingly teach grown adults to do again, a skill that every single one of them had, for free, before they turned 4. We didn't get more advanced. We got a backrest and forgot how to fold. Now, let's be fair and steelman the chair for a second, because I can hear the objection. The chair won for reasons. It's easier to get out of, which matters more as you age. It works beautifully with tables, with desks, with assembly lines, with the entire architecture of industrial work. You can't operate a sewing machine or a keyboard from a deep squat. The chair is a tool that fits the modern-built environment perfectly. The problem was never that we invented the chair. The chair is great. The problem is what happened when the chair became the only way we ever rested. When it went from one option to the total default. When it stopped being a tool and became the water we swim in, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, every day, from the school desk at age 5 to the office chair at 65. We didn't add the chair to our repertoire of resting postures. We let it replace all the others. And that monoculture of rest is, increasingly, what researchers think is the actual problem. Because go back to Raichlen and the Hadza for a second. The takeaway from that study was never that sitting is evil and you must squat for 10 hours a day or perish. The takeaway was subtler and honestly more useful. Humans evolved to rest in lots of positions, to shift constantly, to squat, then kneel, then sit cross-legged, then crouch, then stand, then get back down. Variety. Movement even within stillness. The body was never designed to hold one single fixed posture for hours on end. And it doesn't matter whether that fixed posture is a slouch or a perfect squat. The villain isn't the chair. The villain is stillness without variety. The body that never changes shape. The Hadza don't have a fitness routine. They've never heard a podcast about mobility and run off to do hip openers. They just live in an environment where resting naturally means 100 different shapes a day, every one of them keeping a little hum of muscle alive. Every one of them flexing an ankle, or loading a hip, or firing a calf. The squat is the headline, but the real story is the variety underneath it. And that's the thing we lost. Not just one posture. We lost the entire vocabulary of resting on the ground. We narrowed 100 shapes down to one. We took a species whose skeleton grew facets to accommodate a lifetime of squatting, and we sat it in a chair so completely that a few generations later, the descendants of those squatters can't hold the position for 90 seconds without falling over. So the next time you watch a small child drop effortlessly into a perfect heels-flat squat to inspect a bug on the pavement, understand what you're actually looking at. You're not watching a cute kid thing. You're watching the factory default. The original human resting posture, the one your body shipped with, the one that's pressed into ancient bones in museums all over the world. The one your 40th great-grandparent held by the fire 40,000 years ago while watching the horizon. Perfectly comfortable, with no chair anywhere in sight. The child still has it. You were born with it too. And the question of whether you can ever truly get it back, whether those ankles can be coaxed into remembering what they were built to do, leads us to the strangest part of this whole story. The part almost nobody ever tells you. The thing the people who study these ancient bones quietly suspect about your body and the chair you're sitting in right now.